tell everybody a little bit about your career and how you got started in filming.
Well, let's see. I was born in San Francisco, and I went to undergraduate school. Can everybody see, sort of? Born in San Francisco, went to undergraduate school in upstate New York, a small school called Union College in Schenectady. It was a liberal arts school. I graduated in 1997, and I went to USC for 2 years, a program called the Peter Stark Producing Program, which is a 2-year Master of Fine Arts program. I graduated in 1999. After I graduated, I worked for a screenwriter for about 2.5 years, and a guy named John August.
Yeah, talk about a little bit about what he did.
He wrote a movie called Go. He wrote Big Fish. He did most of the good work in Charlie's Angels 1 and 2. He did a lot of work on Minority Report, the parts that make sense of Minority Report he did.
He's a talented guy.
He's super, super talented and like a disgustingly decent human being. I don't mean to keep you up. He's a really, really talented guy, and I learned a lot from him. I just stole a ton of screenwriting craft and office supplies from him for about 2.5 years, and learned a lot. And then when I was working for John, I wrote and directed a digital video short that I shot on the weekend with some buddies called Terry Tate Office Linebacker.
Yes.
Which
if you guys
so I did that, and I did it on the weekend for nothing, and just make me and 10 other buddies laugh, and ended up I submitted it to Sundance as a joke because I just in order to get my rejection letter, because I'd gotten one for a really bad student film I made at USC. I submitted it, and they sent me a rejection letter. It was like really chilly, and like they misspelled my name and everything.
Right.
Rawson Thurber. Sorry, but we can't take your film. And my friend framed it for me, and I put it up in my bathroom. And I decided that my goal was every year to get a rejection letter from Sundance, whether or not I like actually made a film or not. I was just gonna
to Cannes.
Right. That was the plan. So I sent it in like the last day and forgot about it, and then Terry Tate ended up getting into that. And Reebok got a hold of it and said, we don't really know what this is, but it's pretty funny, so here's some money and go make some more. And ended up making 4 short films, 4 more 4-minute shorts. And
all on the Terry Tate.
All on Terry Tate, and then cut 60-second commercials based on that, and one of them ended up on the Super Bowl, and then it kind of moved on from there. And during that time, I was writing, when I was working for John, I wrote I wrote 2 scripts. The first one was a really bad action movie. And what sucks about writing a bad action movie script is like, on page 82 when, the sort of curtains part and you realize you just wrote Die Hard. And you're just like, oh, fuck, why would I write Die Hard? Die Hard's a great movie, but, it's Die Hard. You can't do it twice. Or maybe you can. Anyways, so I did that, and that sort of spun me out for a little bit. And then April of 2000, or March of 2001, I started writing this. I wrote Dodgeball, and
where did the inspiration come to write a comedy?
Well, it was originally called Underdogs, and I'd always loved comedy, and I'd always loved sports, and I'm sort of a comedy geek and a sports nerd, and I wanted to put those 2 things together. And some of my favorite films growing up, from the early 80s, it's not 80s, but 79, Caddyshack, Meatballs, Stripes,
Bill Murray,
Bill Murray, Ghostbusters, which might be the funniest movie ever made, and Revenge of the Nerds, which if you haven't seen it, you must. It's perfectly.
People in here have seen Revenge.
Anybody here seen Revenge of the Nerds?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Perfectly structured film, FYI. And so those comedies, which I always loved, and then sports films that I've always loved as well. Like Bull Durham is one of my favorite films, if not my favorite film. Hoosiers.
Hope you got that poster.
You know what? I never got it, but I
actually, a little side story. The way I know Rawson is I worked on Dodgeball, and my big thing on the reshoots was to go get a Bull Durham poster,
right?
Which was actually really hard to get within 1 hour.
But then you got it.
But we went out and got it. We found it at this little niche store.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up in
So yeah, it was one of my favorite film, and we were doing just 1 day of reshoots, and I wanted to put it in Vince Vaughn's place at the opening, and we couldn't get it cleared in time from TriStar, so we couldn't use it. But TJ fucking got it for us. Great. Okay, so right, I forgot what I was talking about.
You were talking about your inspiration in sports movies, and then
so Best of Times, etc., Wildcats, Major League, just kind of, So this was my attempt at kind of, a hug to those movies, an homage to them, and I knew that didn't want it to be serious, and I wanted it to be, and I didn't. And as soon as I thought about Dodgeball, I realized that, first it made me laugh, and secondly, I knew that no one would take Dodgeball seriously, but everybody.
People who did are now like in the military.
Right, or dead. And then the fact that everybody has a visceral memory of Dodgeball one way or the other. I mean, you're either getting hit or hitting somebody, and when you say Dodgeball to someone, they either break into a smile or break into a sweat. But either way, I mean, it's sort of a Proustian kind of thing, and sort of a nostalgic touchstone. And I just thought it was really funny, and I knew I could kind of make up my own rules and my own history of where it came from, and
like the O'Houlihan.
Yeah, well, Patches O'Houlihan certainly, and and the ESPN 8 The Ocho with Cotton McKnight and Pepper Brooks, who, I mean, I love sports, but I hate sportscasters. They drive me up a fucking wall. And so I hope to kind of satirize them a little bit.
Yeah, continuing the tradition of Major League with that, really.
Right. Well, certainly, Bob Uecker, just a bit outside, and you look at Fred Willard's work in Best in Show. But yeah, I mean, that was the idea, was to kind of mock that. And you have your play-by-play commentator who's, a pianist. He uses 3 words when one will suffice, and you're really dim-witted but enthusiastic and always wrong color commentator, Jason Bateman. And so I got to kind of put those 2 worlds together. And
so now you've got the script, and you've directed some huge commercials. How do you then make the transition, being a young filmmaker who's only done commercials, and say, here, industry, give me a movie?
Well, it was actually, Terry Tate hadn't come out. It came out in January of 2002, I think. Isn't that right? Anybody? I don't know. I think it was 2002. And no, 2003. Sorry, I'm totally wrong. But it hadn't come out. My life's sort of going a little faster than I thought it would. So Terry Tate hadn't come out yet, and I wrote the script working for John, and I didn't have an agent. And I knew a few people who knew a few people who were agents, and so I sent it around town and got an agent based on the script, who then sent the script around town, and I just I demanded to direct. I knew that no one was going to give me an opportunity to do it. I mean, the thing about directing is no one's going to come knock on your door and say, hey, we've got this script we want you to direct. Stop working at Starbucks and come do this. It just doesn't happen that way. And if you want to direct, what you got to do is direct.
You have to demand, right?
Well, you have to demand it, and you also have to, you can't wait for anybody's permission. And when I say that, I mean that had Fox said no, or had this movie not been made, I would be scrounging money together to make a short film, or writing a 3-page dialogue scene that I shoot with a video camera, and cut it. I mean, anything you can do, direct traffic, and whatever, anything at all. And I think that was a key component. So I said, I just said I'm directing it. And
were there some roadblocks?
It wasn't. Early on, there were no roadblocks to me directing it, because no one wanted to make the movie anyways. So it didn't really matter that I demanded to direct a movie that no one wanted to make. And then it got to so beaten down, because every time I'd go in on a meeting, it would be the same thing of like, wow, really funny script. We're not going to make a Dodgeball movie, and also we don't validate. So thank you. And so it would cost me like $7 every time to be told no, so I went in to meet with Stuart Kornfeld, who's the producer on this, with Ben. And I'd actually written the role of White Goodman for Ben Stiller. I'm a huge Ben Stiller fan. And
so from the script stage,
actually...
Wow.
And Vince Vaughn. And the only other person in here that I wrote specifically for was Justin Long, who plays Justin in the movie. I was a big fan of from Galaxy Quest, which I don't know if you guys have seen, and a TV show that was only good in its first season, a show called Ed.
Okay.
And big Justin Long fan. So I wrote 3 roles specifically, and I got all 3 of those actors.